workshop on allergies and asthma. I'm Sarah, one of the CAs that works here. And just a few housekeeping bits. Our workshop next month is going to be getting 15 pounds healthier in 15 weeks. That's going to be on May 21st at 6:30. And we also have an event coming up May 12th called Unite, which is a night we're hosting for ladies. It's going to be all surrounded about health and wellness. There's going to be some awesome food vendors. There's going to be organic henna. There's going to be some biohacking weight loss machine, or workout machine rather. There's also going to be massage and lots of other cool things. So definitely mark your calendars and bring your lady friends, tell your lady friends, tell everyone about it, and come on out. And it's a free event as well. And then this Thursday we have our heart sound recorder. That's going to be Thursday morning from 7 a.m. to 12:30. So sign up for that. That's also something free that we offer at the office, which is really cool. Elaine, you've had it done before. Judy, I think you've had yours done as well. So she'll be here that morning if you guys want to sign up again. And Christine, if you want to come check it out, you're welcome to sign up. And Colin, you are welcome as well. And then also for those of you who are not taking advantage of our awesome Wellspring Market, it's our online collective of all non-GMO organic foods at the lowest price possible on the internet. Orders over $50, it's free shipping to your door. They have weekly specials, and definitely take advantage of it. It's a really great online site, and they've added this new filter. So if you're gluten-free, dairy-free, you can click all of the buttons and it'll only bring up the food specifically that you want, or the products that pertain to exactly what you want. So yeah.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, so vegan, vegetarian, like you just name it. And we're only showing 12 buttons there. There are over 30 buttons that you can choose to filter.
Yeah.
So no waste of time. Like at the regular grocery store where you have to pick up and look at every label, right?
And find the ones that's salt versus salt-free.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so this evening, you are going to be getting some wonderful information from one of the best chiropractors I know. And Elaine, is she planning to do something?
Elaine, do you want to say a little bit about your experience, even just recently? Remember the email that you sent?
Yeah.
Do you want to say it from your seat? You can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Elaine. I've been a customer or a practice member. I was fortunate enough to find Dr. Heather about 2 years ago at the Ladies Expo because I had fallen and screwed up my neck and all that good stuff. And as we've gone forward, she's fixed my plantar fasciitis. But one of the things that I've had, and I had surgery in 2004. From 2004 to 2006, I had sinus issues like infection. So many antibiotics, steroids, everything, and they eventually did a CAT scan, found out I didn't have proper drainage. Anyways, long story short, I started feeling better, but when she did the surgery, she deviated my septum, so I still have chronic sinus issues. And through this winter, every time I came for my back and everything, how are you? Can't breathe. And she's just this, that, and whatever. Told me about dairy, told me, and this is what she was talking about, is I came in about 3 weeks ago, and I was miserable. And she says, well, I said, I've never met anybody flummier than me. Well, are you drinking enough? Well, what do you mean? And I went to work that day. I had half a cup of coffee. I had a kombucha. I had 2 cups of tea, a large water. And in the middle of the afternoon, I was walking to my printer and I said, oh my God, I feel good. I can't remember the last time I felt good. And so I sent her an email and like, who would have known? I must have been dehydrated and didn't even know it. But between the removing the dairy and drinking more, yesterday I had my butt in my flower bed for about 2 hours. And I was sitting on the ground in my flower bed, and I could not believe I went to bed and slept great last night. Just, I got rid of all of those antibiotic nasal rinses and things. I have not tried the Restore yet.
Yeah, it's fine. Look at what's happened just by you following the instructions, recommendations, getting your nervous system checked.
Yes.
You've been so good about that your nervous system's getting clearer and clearer. And tonight we're going to cover how that could possibly help. How could your neck help your sinuses and your allergies and all of that?
Yeah, because I like when my face is in that pillow, she just does the right spots in my neck, and it's like, wow, I can breathe. And, you know, it's all of it goes together with the breathing. I'm feeling better. I'm walking more. Lost a couple of pounds, not as many as I'd like, but they're slowly finding their way off. And, you know, it's just, I'm not taking a ton of chemicals anymore.
Right,
you know?
on.
I still need the nasal spray, but
we're in a process, aren't we?
We are definitely way less. And I had one day my husband drove me to the emergency room. I walked into the Fanny Allen and said, I can't breathe. They hooked me up to all of this stuff. How long have you had asthma? I've never had asthma. I've never had breathing issues, you know, that got to that point. And they put me on all kinds of inhalers and drugs and everything. And I'm down to one nasal spray when I'm really, really congested. And if I'm having a really bad time, I do have an inhaler. But I almost never use that anymore.
Right on.
Awesome.
Right on.
All right. Well, without further ado, Dr. Heather Rice.
All right. So, as you all know, this time of the year is a big time of the year for folks that struggle with breathing issues, right? Because this is when springtime happens and the pollen comes out and all of that. So it's interesting that we think of this as allergy season, but really all this is pollen season. It's just pollen season. But some people are not adapting properly to pollen season. And that's what we're going to dive into today to understand that. All of you that are here, I'm delighted that you're here. Who's here as a guest or as a new to the practice? 2 of you. And then you old-timers back there, right, that are in the practice regularly and coming to our workshops and all of that. So I know that even those of you that are familiar with how I teach, that you're actually showing up here today because everybody here is action takers. That's what I can tell you about yourselves, is you're action takers, that you want to learn more so that you can take action with your health. And success belongs to the action takers, right? Everybody agree with me on that one? Yeah. So thank you so much for being here. I want you to get the most out of this. And I know that in all the over 30 years I've been teaching, it's the people that are the most engaged that get the most out of it. So can I ask you all to be fully committed to being engaged tonight so that you get the most out of it? Yeah. All right, excellent. So again, it is pollen season. And I'm going to refer to my notes because I popped in some details along the way that I want to make sure I don't forget. But essentially, what we find is they actually did a study where they looked at why is it that we don't just have a bunch of people with hay fever these days. We have allergies that are getting worse and worse and worse. Do you know what I mean? Right? Yeah, worse and worse. And not just the seasonal allergies, but the food allergies, right? All different kinds of allergies are getting worse and worse and worse. And they did a study to try and understand why was that happening. And they came up with 3 reasons from this study. The first reason was that people actually were not practicing enough positive health impacts, or they weren't participating in their health and making healthy choices, right? That was one thing. Instead, they were being reactive, right? They were waiting for a problem to show up and then trying to respond to it instead of being focused on health promotion. So that was the first reason. The second reason was that they actually had a lack of awareness of what to do. They just didn't know. They would have done it if they had known, but they just didn't know. The third reason, which was by far the biggest reason, was procrastination. They actually knew what to do, but they just didn't get around to it. How many people here have ever had that happen to them, right? Exactly, right? It happens to all of us because nowadays we have more and more distractions, don't we? So procrastination was the #1 reason why people had a higher level of allergies, atopic disorders, which are that whole range of the asthma, the eczema, all those kinds of things. So we're going to keep that in mind as we proceed through our slides here. So check it out then. Oops, I see. We need to make a connection here. That's essential, making connections, isn't it? Okay, here we go. So body signals, right? We call our whole series here a body signal series because we know that if we can understand the signals that the body is giving us, we can start to make healthier decisions about what we need to do with that. So we can learn to read our bodies. So when we think of the body signals this time of the year with people struggling, they're going to have allergies, hay fever, rhinitis, which is runny nose, that's what that is, asthma, eczema, which is the skin thing. So people think, well, breathing issues, what does eczema have to do with that? It's actually in the categories of what are called atopic disorders, meaning that there are things that seem in our environment that seem to trigger it to act up and to show up. And how bad is it? Well, if we talk about asthma, in 2009, the CDC estimated that the prevalence of asthma in the United States was 17.5 million people. That is over 7% of our population. So if you know 50 people, anybody can think of 50 people that they know, then at least 2 of them are actually going to be struggling with asthma. That's how common it is. Now, any of you that are older, do you remember when you were going to school? How many kids had asthma? How many kids had puffers in school? They didn't. But nowadays, there's lots of them. Yeah. So it really has accelerated. In fact, 7.1 million children, that's almost 10% of children have asthma. And more than half have had severe or uncontrolled asthma, resulting in an asthma attack within the previous year. More than half of them. So we're talking, millions of people having these serious attacks. And these patients made 17 million visits to doctors' offices and emergency rooms and accounted for almost 500,000 hospitalizations. Yeah, so it's serious stuff. And despite all the advances in diagnosis and treatment, asthma still remains a serious disease, and it's responsible for more than 3,000 deaths annually. Yeah, so that's a lot. That's like 1 per 100,000 in our population. And now, as we said, it seems to be happening more and more often. So let's actually look at the statistics on this. So this is starting from 1900, when you might have the occasional person that had a little bit of hay fever, right? And look at what's happened over time. We can see this suddenly, there's an inflection point where it skyrockets. And this is allergen specific, meaning you could test the IgE, you can test that white blood cell, that immune system cell, and you can find the trigger, what it's related to, what the allergen is. And so over time, we can see all of these increasing. Look at the dermatitis that increases. Look at the asthma, how that's going up. Look at the runny nose. And do you know that many times now, the runny nose in children, it's become so common that it's going unnoticed. It's actually becoming normalized. That's a problem. When mothers don't recognize that their kid actually has a chronic health concern, because they look around them and 1 in 2 kids have chronic health concerns. And of those 1 in 2 kids, right, we see that a certain segment of them, it's showing up as asthma and allergies. And this runny nose is a body signal that is significant. Yeah. All right. So when we look at what does it mean, what are these symptoms, these signals trying to tell us? It's always the body's way of asking for help. And so we want to understand what really is the body looking for. And if we can understand it, then we'll know exactly what to give it. So many times in our culture nowadays, we've actually been programmed to take situations that we feel are uncomfortable. And Elaine gave the whole scenario very classically, didn't she? There was nothing unusual about what she was reporting, where when we're uncomfortable, the natural thing to go to is, let's give you a drug to make you more comfortable. Right? How many people think that this is a problem, that this is the way we're responding to body signals, is just try and shut them down, right? Because those drugs are not correcting the cause, are they? So our body, it's going to whisper at first, and after a while, it's going to start screaming. And if it's still not addressed, it's going to show up in all different ways. So we understand that when the body is giving us a signal, it's there for a reason. Does that all make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing that'll happen is that you'll get that drug so you do feel better, and that will allow you to just keep pushing on and keep doing all the things you've been doing that got you into that place. So it actually means that you might be feeling better as you're actually getting worse. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
So when I looked at what is my job here, if I know that people are getting worse and worse and our statistics are getting worse and worse, I realized that what I needed to do is get to them. If they're procrastinating, right, I needed to get to them and create a pivot point before they hit the crisis, right? 3,000 deaths a year with asthma. How do I get to those people before they're in that crisis state, right? That's what I needed to know. And I needed to create that pivot point to reach them so that I could really make a change and get them on the road to the optimum health that they really want, but they weren't aware of how to get it, right? You see how true that study is, right? So really, that's the thing is, and here's the other thing that they're told. Once they identify what the trigger is, remember the allergens, the antigen triggers, right? Once they identify the trigger, what is the recommendation? Just avoid that. Just start living your life around this issue so that you don't have a problem, right? And I have people that come in with, they can hardly eat anything because their list just keeps getting longer and longer, right? And they can't be outside at, it used to be just the fall, but now it's the fall and the spring, right? And they're trying to live around it because that's what they've been told to do, right? And how good is that working for them? Not so good, because nobody's actually getting to the cause. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to share with you tonight, what are some of the causes that we have found? Before I go to that, though, I want you to have an understanding about the immune system. So let's go there right now. What is its purpose? How does it work? How does it develop? Okay, who knows what the nervous system's job is in the body? What's the job of the nervous system?
To
keep everything working.
Yeah, and it's you were going to say something?
yeah, but I can't really think of
You know what it is?
word. It's like to tell us when certain things
That's
need
exactly
to
right.
happen.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Yeah. Can you hand me that black thing right behind you on the shelf?
This?
Yeah. Does anybody know what this is?
Oh yes,
What is it?
cable,
What kind of cabling?
fiber. It's
It's
telephone.
before fiber optics.
Yeah, no, I know.
It's an old telephone cable.
Wow.
It's communication right here. Can't you just hear the conversations going back and forth? Right? What is the job of our nervous system? It's all about communication. Okay? All right, what is the job of our immune system? What's its job? It's not a trick question. I really mean it. Like, what's the purpose of the immune system?
Oh, it's
Keep us
help us
healthy.
fight off.
Protective, fight off, defense, right? Immune system is all about our defenses. That's exactly right. And so we want to understand, once we understand what its purpose is, and then how it actually fulfills that purpose, how does it work, and then how does it develop into that defensive system that we need, then we'll understand how do we really effectively address these concerns where folks are struggling with these atopic concerns. So that is what the immune system does. And so think of it this way. So we said it was defense, didn't we? It's defense. That's exactly what it is. Now, it's so well designed, so brilliantly designed. If you think of our own country, we have a defense system in our country, don't we? It's the military, right? Within the military, we have different branches of the military, don't we? And we have one organization that kind of sees over the whole process, right? So the overseeing one would be like the CIA, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So they're doing the checking things out, trying to figure out what is going on, so that then the commander-in-chief can start to direct the generals to direct, right? And at some point, it's going to make sense to use the Army, and other points the Air Force, and other points the Navy, and then even within that, there's the special ops that are going to go in, right? Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
That's our nervous system. I mean, that's our immune system. That's our immune system. Yeah, that's the defense mechanism. That's how it's designed. And so the immune system it's for attacking organisms and substances that are not supposed to be in our body and gracefully escorting them out of the body. That's the job of the immune system, right? And so the first thing it has to do is recognize that there is a foe present and then recruit the right forces, the right cells to go in and accomplish that task. So what is our immune system made of? it's going to be a number of different organs and tissues and cells. So for the organs, it's the thymus gland that lives right under your breastbone, which happens to shrink in adults. So it's there, gangbusters for the kids, and then it shrinks back as adults. We have the spleen, which makes immune system and blood cells. We have the bone marrow, which makes blood cells, right? We have our lymph nodes and lymph tissues, the tonsils and so on. And then we have all the different white blood cells that are running around our body. So that's what makes up the whole immune system. And so we need to have all of those different components working right. What if the commander said, okay, we need the army going out there, and they didn't have many soldiers because they didn't recruit them, right? But we need what you do. Oh, we don't have enough of those, right? Do you see how that works?
Mm-hmm.
Or what if the instruction was, okay, we need this many recruits to go there, and instead the message comes through wrong, and now you have 10 times as many going in. That actually could not be a good thing, because it could be worse that way. Do you see? So there has to be good communication in the immune system for that defense to work. And what system is responsible for communication?
Nervous system.
Yeah. And so we talk about them as though they're two different systems, but they are intricately linked. We really need to call it the neuroimmune system. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And here's another interesting part, which is we're going to get into a little bit more detail here, but let's bring it right in right now. So anybody ever notice that stress seems to make things worse, right? Mm-hmm. So when we're stressed and we become more emotional and we have cortisol, which is the hormone for stress, if that's running around our body, right? Hormones will have an impact on our immune system and our nervous system. So really, it's the neuroimmunoendocrine system. Yeah, and our psychological state, it's actually the psychoneuroimmunoendocrine system. It's all linked together, right? And so we have to be cognizant of that if we're really going to get to the cause of what's going on. Okay. And we know also, perhaps you do too, that the things that the immune system is going to be targeting might be viruses, bacteria. It might be stealth organisms like Lyme that comes in, which it fills in those categories. It might also be cancer. You know that immune system is linked to cancer as well, right? Molds, fungus, right? That whole range. Those are all the types of foreign bodies or inappropriate cells that are in the body in the wrong place at the wrong time. All right. So, what is our immune system looking like? What does it do? And it's very complex. It's very sophisticated. And so it's this whole surveillance and defense system. And the immune system is ready to go 24/7 to keep you at ease and out of harm's way, like 24/7. It's ready and waiting 24/7. But it costs a lot of energy in order to run the immune system. So if a tiger suddenly showed up and you needed resources to survive the next minute and just like start to run and fight or flight, the nervous system is actually the system that will decide, is it time for the immune system to come out and work? Or is it time for it to actually be shut down and paused because it's going to require too much energy right now? So the nervous system will make that determination. If you're stressed, it shuts that immune system down. Yeah, because it's saying, okay, if a tiger's really showing up, we're going to need you later, immune system, if we get wounded. But right now, you're putting too much of a drain on the energy we need to just run right now or fight right now. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So remember that although the immune system is the actual defense, those are the soldiers going in, it's the nervous system that actually makes that decision if the timing is right or not on that. And that's really useful information for us as well. And the other thing, let's just really honor this idea that what a brilliant design the immune system is. What a brilliant design. The sophistication and complexity is amazing. And we're still finding out more and more about it. We don't know everything about the immune system. We're still finding out more. And every time we find out more, it blows you away more of what we're finding out. Like, oh my gosh, and it has that system all set up to work that way. right? And so the immune system is just another example of the innate intelligence in our body that is always keeping us healthy and healing, right? Our bodies are smart. Everybody agree?
Mhm.
Bodies are smart? Okay. So let's look at how does the immune cells, how do they work? So basically, they're out to look for, some immune cells are looking for, where are the foe, where's the enemy? And then they'll call in other guys to come in and punch them out, eat them up, get them out of the body. Pretty good design, pretty good design. And so part of that whole cascade is that certain powerful chemicals are going to be part of that process as well. And the result is creating local inflammation. That's actually again, a brilliant design to create inflammation in the area, because that's our body healing. When we have an inflammatory response, that's our body healing. So we've heard, oh, inflammation is bad, haven't we? But it turns out that it's what we need. The problem is when it is long-lived. That's when it becomes a problem. Yeah. And so if we have everything responding properly at the right amounts and in the right time, then it's designed to work perfectly. But what if some of the communication is off and now you're not getting enough immune response, right? Then your body doesn't have what it needs to battle that. Or what if you have too much, an over response, right? Now I want to give you an example of how hilarious life is. So the topic here is breathing issues, right? So I have not been sick. I've not had any kind of cold or flu. It's been all around me for a couple of years, maybe more than that. More than that, yeah. And last week I was going strong, feeling great energy and everything. And a few weeks ago I had some special testing, nutritional testing done with a workshop, a conference that I was attending, and so we practiced on each other. And as they were testing, they said, "Oh, it looks like something's coming up in your lungs." I'm like, feel okay. And so, I'm just doing my regular thing, all my healthy lifestyle habits, but it's been pretty intense lately, so I've not been getting as much sleep as I need to. I knew that. I thought I was getting away with it. And on Thursday, I finished adjusting and I had to catch a plane. And things took a little bit longer in the office than I had predicted or planned for. So finally, I'm racing to the airport. And do any of you remember a long time ago, go OJ, go, right? The guy running through the airport, right, with his bags, leaping over people, right? Yeah, that was me. Yeah. So I'm running through Burlington Airport. I've got a backpack on. I've got my rollerboard, my handbag, right, running. And I get there, and of course, the flight is delayed. And so it turns out that they could put me on a very late flight, around midnight, or tomorrow morning. I said, I'll take the tomorrow morning flight. I'm going to go home to bed because it's awesome. I'm going to go get a great night's sleep, right? And so as I leave, that day had been pretty busy, so I probably didn't drink as much water as I wanted to. I didn't get as much food into me as I wanted to, right? And on the way home, when I'm finally relaxing and thinking about this great sleep I'm going to get, I kind of start to get some chills, and I thought, oh, it's just because I'm dehydrated, And I get home and I hydrate and I eat a salad, and I'm like, I'm just going to take an Epsom salt bath. But on the way home, I started to get this pain in my chest. And as I took a deep breath in, it was kind of painful to do that. And it kept getting worse. And it was getting worse and worse until I could only take shallow breaths, and I had this pain there. I'm thinking, is this a heart attack? Is that what's happening? And the other part of my brain said, no way could that be possible. Look at your lifestyle. But I was having trouble talking. I couldn't.
Wow.
And so I called a friend, and she hears me on the phone. She's like, I'm coming right over. And she gets there. She's like, do you think we should do something? I'm like, maybe. And she knows when she hears me say maybe, right?
Yeah.
So she calls 911. I had my first ride in an ambulance, right? They're checking me. They're doing the EKG. They can't find anything. They're listening to my lungs. They can't find anything, right? So on the way to the hospital, I start to kind of feel a little bit better. And I'm kind of feeling better. Not a lot better, but a little bit better. Enough that I'm feeling okay, maybe my body's okay. Maybe I can, maybe I just pulled a muscle when I was putting my backpack on. And maybe I displaced a rib. Maybe that's what it is. And so on the way to the hospital, the EMTs, they're saying, well, you seem to know medical jargon. Like, how do you know that? And I said, well, I'm a chiropractor. And then one woman says, I don't think I would ever do that. Like, my friend tells me what happens there. I don't think I'd ever do that. And I'm like, oh, but it's not, millions of people over 100 years are getting chiropractic adjustments and getting well naturally. And they're like, and I said, in the model I use, I actually don't even do any forceful moves. I use light touch. And then they say, well, how does that work? I said, well, it's a tonal model. And so then I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, this is an opportunity, right? I've got a captive audience here, right? And so I look at him, I said, are you ready to be educated? Nice. And then I do a lay lecture for the rest of the ride. Awesome. Right? I'm educating them about chiropractic. And I get to the ER and they, again, check all the vitals and then they take my temperature. And I had a fever. I didn't even feel like I had a fever, but I had a fever. That's interesting. Then they take a chest x-ray. Then they say, well, and they did blood work, right? They're looking for the damage to the heart, right? Because everybody's thinking it kind of looks like a heart attack. But by that time, I'm feeling better and better. Then they say, we're going to give you some nitro just to see if that'll help you get better. I'm like, wait, let's just wait for the blood results before we go doing that, right? And so then they finally come back and they said, have you been coughing lately? I said, no. I mean, clearing my throat, but that's about it. They said, you have pneumonia.
Wow.
I said, what? And then I said, that's awesome. Because I'm not having a heart attack. Like, that doesn't fit my paradigm of how that could be possible. But pneumonia, that's an acute illness. I've been pushing myself. That makes sense to me. And now I know exactly what I need to do. I'm going to get adjusted more often. I know what nutrients I need to go take to boost up that immune system. I need that rest. Like, I know exactly what to do. And then the doctor, of course, says, so we're going to give you a course of antibiotics. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I know exactly what I am going to do. And I know that my body can handle it. Yeah. Right? So that all happened on Thursday night. Wow. I feel like I recovered faster from pneumonia than most people recover from the common cold.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Right? How could I be up here lecturing to you, doing this workshop, right, if I didn't have a really smart body, that if I paid attention and understood the body signal, right? Mm-hmm. So over the weekend I rested, I got my spine checked every day, I took the nutrients that I knew would help, and I had this fast, rapid recovery, because that's actually what the body's designed to do. So it wasn't just because I've been living a crappy lifestyle and then that day I started to get adjusted and that day I got some nutrients in. No, it was the lead up of that really healthy lifestyle that was actually managing it subclinically, meaning without symptoms, maybe actually for a couple weeks, because my colleagues just detected something in the lungs, right? Wow. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. So that experience is an example of my immune system being turned down because I was going. And I was basically telling my immune system, not now, not yet, right? Do you see? And then when I finally said, oh, I'm going to go home and just go to sleep, my body said, now, right? And then that's what showed up.
That's incredible.
Isn't that an amazing story? Yeah. So I'm just this is hilarious that life would manifest breathing issues in me just in the nick of time for this workshop, right? Now, this workshop is actually about different concerns. It's not about that acute inflammatory thing that our bodies were designed to do really, really well. It's about when our body is chronically, our immune system's not responding appropriately chronically, year after year, season after season, day after day, right? And that's what we want to look at more closely here. Okay. So, and that means allergies, hay fever, rhinitis, asthma, and eczema. So if you think of hay fever, right? Lots of people can be exposed to hay or pollen. Not everybody has that response. So it tells us it's not the pollen that's causing the problem. It's what's happening in that person's body that's the problem. You see? So we don't want to just say just avoid that, because it's a signal that if you're not responding appropriately to that, what else is going on that you're not even aware of, right? So the allergic response is a body signal that something bigger might be a problem. Something's getting in the way of your body appropriately and readily responding to its environment in the way that it should be. Something's getting in the way. So we're going to look at that. And first we're going to go to how does it all develop? How does the nervous system develop? So think about this. When the baby is in utero, it's in a sterile environment. It has no germs, no bugs, nothing, right? Sterile environment. As the baby comes through the vaginal canal, that canal is loaded with the mother's healthy bugs, healthy gut flora, healthy vaginal flora, right? And it is meant to just slide across that baby so that it gets all over it. Because now it's populating for that baby the exact environment that that mother has been living in, that's now going to help that baby start to build the immune system that can recognize that environment. And at first, when a baby is born, it stays close to the mom, right? And it's in that home environment.
Yeah.
And then after a while, you know, the siblings come and play and touch, and the pets kind of start to interact, right? And then it's a nice day, and you're taking the baby outside. And just recognize that all of those interactions, that where we're going in concentric circles further and further out, is introducing new flora to that baby, for that baby to appropriately and readily respond to. That's the design. That's the brilliant design. It was meant to be that way. If you think 40,000 years ago, did they have, what is it called? The antiseptic hand thing, Purell? Or,
Yeah, Purell.
yeah. Do we have that? No. Right? So we had babies being born and they're on the ground, right? With mama, right? And they're playing in the dirt as soon as they can start to move around, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so all of that is to build a strong immune system. If you think about the army, right? And you think of a soldier, highly trained, highly accomplished, you know, special ops, like the highest level, and you send them in and they're going to get that job done, right? Well, let's track back through that person's life to when they were a little kid. And when they were a little kid, the first thing they had was a paper sword, a cardboard sword that they played with, right? And when they got old enough and responsible enough, they had a knife that they learned how to use, right? And maybe if they're a Vermonter, they were trained in hunting, right? So they got first their BB gun, right? And then they got something a little bit more, right? But they were trained over time, and they didn't get the next thing until they were well trained on the one before that. And it's a process. And then when you join the military, you've got a whole boot camp you have to go through before they're ever going to even let you near the weapons. And then you're going to learn about how this weapon works and how this one, and you learn how to clean it and take care of it and how it works before you go on to the next one, until you're up at that high elite level. It's training, and it's gradual over time. You would never take a 10-year-old that loves playing war and send him into battle, right? You wouldn't do it because the training isn't there. So we have to have the opportunity for that training. And so what if we're protecting our kids so they don't have exposure to all the flora at those incremental time periods? What's going to happen to their immune system? It's not getting the training. It's not getting the boot camp. And then we send them out and say, now try to deal with this, right? Out into the big world, try to deal with this. Do you see?
That's probably why another reason why I have a nut allergy. I think I was a C-section.
Yeah, so you didn't get any of the vaginal flora. And not only that, C-section, you're taken out of the mother into an environment that is not sterile as much as they try to. And what kind of organisms are in the hospital?
Very hostile ones.
The most hostile ones, right? Yeah, the superbugs are there, right? Yeah. Makes sense, doesn't it? So that vaginal birth is key for building that immune system. And so nowadays, let's just say this, if you miss that opportunity of vaginal birth, you're never going to get that opportunity again.
Right.
But what if you were really diligent about making sure you're getting a lot of probiotic organisms into you, whether it's through a supplement, through your diet? What if you're breathing fresh air and getting it in that way? What if you're getting your hands in the dirt and getting it in that, like, do you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so the next thing we would see as the immune system's developing is breastfeeding. Right? That's the natural food for baby, is breastfeeding. It's not just full of the nutrients that baby needs. It's not just that when that baby is nursing with the mama, its saliva is signaling to the mother of the exact concentration of nutrients and immune system cells that baby needs at that moment. So the mother is now going to be creating and altering the recipe of the breast milk that she's making to be the exact thing that that child needs. And she'll be passing on her the immune training that she's already had. She's passing that on to the baby before the baby has a chance to develop it itself. And it helps that baby to develop that. So that was the other piece, Colin, that you had mentioned is that you weren't breastfed either, right? Yeah. So that's 2 strikes, right? Yeah. You're seeing how this unfolds. Okay.
My mother screwed me.
Oh, bless her heart. Bless her heart. Nobody told her.
Yeah,
right?
No.
Well, and it's like I've noticed the people that I know that their children are having children, and they attempt breastfeeding for 2 seconds, and it's not working.
I know.
And then that's it, and it's like, I was not breastfed either. I was vaginally delivered, but I was one of those babies that they used to put me in oatmeal baths because I had eczema so bad.
Sheesh.
I
Makes
mean,
so much
my
sense,
whole life I have had to have specialty soaps and all of this stuff because of eczema, and I don't have a single solitary patch. Well, I have one that bugs me, and I found that that's a shampoo that I was using because this is my hair always goes like this.
I see.
And it was my shampoo.
Body signal.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't. But that was the only spot I've had for eczema now for 2 years, and it was the shampoo because I got rid of that shampoo.
So it wasn't the shampoo; it was your body's response to the shampoo, right? So it was the trigger, but someone else may be able to tolerate that. I'm not saying that that's a good shampoo. It might have other toxins in it, but your response, that's really what it was. So looking at why is your body responding that way? Do you see? Mm-hmm. Now, fever. How many people think fever is a good idea? Smart body, right?
Yeah.
Fever is an idea. What's the purpose of a fever?
It's burning off the... Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's burning off any bad
toxin.
It's actually creating the environment that weakens the bad guys so that the good guys can go in and just take care of them.
Right.
Yeah. And so what happens if we do something to bring that fever down?
We suppress its healing powers.
It'll last a lot longer.
The body's going to have to actually work even harder. I asked a nurse one time, why, if the body's smart and that we want a fever to mount that response, why do you give, Tylenol, aspirin, paracetamol? And she said, because we don't want the body to have to work so hard. It's hard work to create a fever. And so I understood that, but I also knew, wow, now the body actually is going to have to work harder. It's like it's being pushed into submission.
Right.
Do you see? Mm-hmm. So the fever is so important. Okay, now watch teething, right? Teething. What happens when babies are, at that age where they're teething, and if you put them down and let them go, what do they always do when they're teething?
Oh, everything goes in the mouth.
Everything goes in the mouth, right? Everything goes in the mouth, right? And what is on everything that they're picking up?
Germs.
Germs, and let's just say more flora that might be what their body needs. Do you see? Now, we always want to avoid toxins, like you don't want them picking up the DDT you just sprayed in your garden and putting that in your mouth, right? We don't want them picking up mercury and putting that in your mouth, right? But healthy dirt is going to boost, it's going to grow that immune system stronger and stronger, right? Mm-hmm. And so teething, what else is happening with teething is the teeth are coming through the gums, and there's actually a little blood that happens there. And when you put those organisms from the environment into your mouth, that's how we get them right into the bloodstream, so we really get them into the body. What a brilliant design, right?
Really.
And so what do we see mamas doing when their kids are, don't put that in your mouth, right? Yeah. You can only have your binky and nobody else's, right? But meanwhile, if they had their siblings' things, that's going to just keep adding and adding. Do you see? Mm-hmm. The whole paradigm shift here, right? Yeah. Whole paradigm shift. Okay, and then we start to look at things like childhood illnesses. And so recognize that the children were designed to go through those childhood illnesses. That's their boot camp. That's where they encounter something that's, this is the biggest one I've had to deal with. And this is how I do it. Oh, I get it. This is how I do it. Chicken pox, measles, mumps, flu. Those are all ways for the immune system to be learning how to work. And there's actually even a phrase that is used that says 103 by 3. We want that child to have 103-degree temperature by the time they're 3 years old, because that's the window where the nervous system and the immune system start to coordinate, so that for the rest of their life, they have a coordinated neuroimmune response. If they miss that window, they don't get another chance at that. That actually will now set the tone in their nervous system for the rest of their life. So there's crucial time periods when we were supposed to have these childhood illnesses. And now we have things that are stopping that from happening. And that actually may be creating a problem. So crucial steps that you can do if you are thinking of having children, or you are having children, or you have grandchildren, make sure that that mama, as much as possible, is going to have that vaginal delivery, that is going to be breastfeeding as long as possible, that is going to be allowing the fevers to happen, the teething to happen, and allowing the childhood illnesses to come about naturally. Because if they get them in childhood, they now have lifelong immunity. You don't need boosters. You get it when you're supposed to get it, and you never have to worry about it again. Yeah,
Whoever got the chicken pox first, all the cousins, they'd invite you over that weekend, and everybody would just get the chicken pox.
That's right, exactly right. Okay, so what happens with unnatural development? Okay, here it is, Colin. We get the C-sections, we get the formula being fed. Do you think the formula has any gut bacteria in it at all? Any healthy microorganisms at all? No. In fact, if you were going to be trying to use milk in your formula, they'd say, make sure it's pasteurized. We don't want any of the gut flora to get in there at all. Do you see? When babies may have had breast milk, or they may have had raw goat or cow's milk as a substitute, if there really was a reason why mamas couldn't feed their babies long ago. That would have been the substitute. Still getting the raw enzymes in there, and a lot of, probiotics are going to come in through that breast milk, yeah? Other kinds of interference, medications, even a medication that saves your life, might be interfering with your immune system. Antibiotics, what do? Wipe out all of your gut flora. Yeah. And then you see the babes getting thrush and, all other kinds of secondary problems, because what immune system they were building up now has been destroyed. Yeah. And did you go through rounds of antibiotics at all? Yeah. And then vaccination, again, this is another whole topic, but vaccinations may be interfering with the body's proper timing of exercising the immune system. Yeah. And not only that, if you look more closely and you look at the ingredients, it's not just the antigens that are going in, but there's heavy metals, and there's toxins, and there's carcinogens that are going in as well. So really think hard about whether that's the right choice for your family, and I'm happy to be a resource for you if you have more questions about that. The hygiene hypothesis. This is the idea that we were never meant to live in a sterile environment. And that, in fact, if we have too much hygiene, too much good hygiene, we actually are setting ourselves up to fail in our immune system, right? So the antibacterial soap that's everywhere is actually producing stronger and stronger organisms that we're not actually being able to fight off because we haven't had the experience of them naturally, right? And so you better have a really robust immune system so that when one comes around that you hadn't encountered before, you're ready to go with it. Yeah. Now more than ever, we need to have that full experience of our immune system leading up. Yeah. Does all that make sense? Okay. So what are the triggers that may show up? Of course, there are, some people will have allergens like pollen, or pet dander, dust mites, right, the classic ones. So that's the allergens that are kind of in nature. But then there are toxins that people will respond to, like the shampoo was a trigger for you. There probably was something toxic in that. And some people have severe chemical sensitivities, don't they? And molds can be in that factor. But think about 40,000 years ago, man, right? They were living where it was
Right.
in a damn cave, right? They
Yeah.
were living with that mold. It wasn't a problem, right? It's a problem now because we've removed that as something. We've never exercised our immune systems with that. Do you see that? And then there's the dietary triggers as well. So when we look at all of those, we have to always come back to the idea that you may have some exposure to toxins like you did, but not everybody has the allergic response to that. It could not be good for your body, but they're not having an over response. So if we recognize what is actually happening in the immune system when there's an allergy, it's an inappropriate over response. Do you see? So what I experienced was a dampening down of the immune response. And then I got the pneumonia, which was a robust response that knocked me over, right? And then I did what I needed to do. My body healed up. But allergies are an inappropriate over response. So we want to understand, we can look at what the triggers are, and certainly we can try to live around those triggers. But we want to also, let's go as far upstream as we can to figure out what is it that made it so that you are having trouble responding to these, what should be just natural things in your environment that are not necessarily a reason to have an over response. All right. So we have to, I want to bring up one other piece to this. What about genetics, right? I've heard this before. Well, in my family, we have allergies in my family, right? I've been doing some advanced study around genetics, and you know that we're discovering all the different variants and SNPs, they call them, right? That the modern medical world is trying to now say, oh, now we know you're going to get this cancer. You're going to have this problem, right? And they're saying that as though it's absolute. But we know that any SNPs that we're discovering, they're not new. There's nothing that has changed in our genome in 40,000 years. Maybe some changes in our gut biome our gut biome, which is the genome of the gut bugs, that may have changed. But our own cells, nothing's changed in 40,000 years. Those weaknesses, variants, those SNPs have been there the full 40,000 years, right? Mm-hmm. And they evolved with a purpose. They had some sort of advantage or they wouldn't still be there. So, for example, we know there's genes that may make you predisposed to gaining weight, for example. Well, I'll tell you what, 40,000 years ago, if there was a famine, who's going to survive that, right? The ones that had that variant are the ones that are going to survive. So everything that we can see in the genetic SNPs, the first thing we know is that the genes that you inherit are coming from 3,700 generations of healthy human beings. Successful, let me change that, not healthy, but successful human beings is what I want to say there. 3,700 generations of successful human beings. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, right? It's the last 5 generations that something has changed. And if it's not our genes that have changed, because our genes don't change that fast, they don't change in 5 generations, and we see this escalation of the atopic disorders. We see this escalation. So what has changed in the last 5 generations that's different?
Our diet and the toxins that we're putting in.
Our environment. It's our environment that's changed. And we have changed our environment so fast that for many people, they have not figured out how to respond. And what's happening is what was a we could say a neutral variant is now becoming a weakness. Now here's the other piece to it. You inherit the genes, but whether those genes are turned on or off, whether they're upregulated or downregulated, do you know what does that?
Microbiome.
Your environment. Yeah, and your microbiome would be part of that. It's your environment that upregulates or downregulates those genes, right? It's your environment. So you have the gift, the potential that you've inherited, and then the lifestyle choices that you're making and the environment that you're in is what determines whether it's going to get upregulated or downregulated, right? So those variants that are there may actually not be turned on. And yet women are going and getting their breasts cut off because they've got that variant. And now research shows that, I think we made a mistake with that. Yeah. So what we do know from all the study we've done is that 99.6% of us have the perfect genome to express perfect health as long as we're in the right environment over time. The key is we have to figure out what's the right environment for that individual. So if they have weaknesses that are being expressed through those variants, it turns out that if we actually provide the right nutritional substances that can balance that variant out, give it a little bit more than most people need or a little less than most people need, and we can track the whole cascade that occurs at that less than cellular level inside the cell, like what's actually happening at that level. If we can provide the right nutrients and we get that nervous system out of stress mode, right? So now the optimum function can express itself, right? That kind of combination, what we're finding is that people actually can have remarkable changes even in the case of allergies. Isn't that amazing? So over 30 years in practice, I see amazing results with people just with chiropractic care and good nutrition. But now that I'm studying at this level, there's a whole testing protocol that I go through for people that, for some reason, we're not hitting it. And so we dive deep and we go upstream. We look at all the individual pieces. We do neurological testing to know exactly which nutrients does this person need. And we figure out how to create the perfect environment for that person so their immune system and their whole body can express optimally.
Really cool.
Yeah. Now, one other thing I want to bring into this idea of our genetics, like we were designed from all these generations to be living in a world where we actually, can you imagine this? You remember Fred Flintstone, right? Can you imagine, right, Fred Flintstone going up to a cave and having food thrown at him, right? That's what we have, right? We can be in our house, we don't have to move, we pick up the phone, and we can have food thrown at us, right? We were not designed for that. We were designed to move, for example. The food that's thrown at us may not actually be food, right?
Yeah.
Something that tastes like food that we're eating, right? That's also part of what's happening. And so one of the other things that would be happening naturally 40,000 years ago, would there be times when the hunt was not successful? And we might go hungry for a little while? Yeah. You know what the body did during those periods of time? It went scavenging all the bad, unhealthy cells and ate those until you had good food to put in again. It's called autophagy. Autophagy is the way I remember it, right? It means self-eating.
Okay, A-U-T.
A-U-T-O, autophagy, P-H-A-G-Y, autophagy. And so one of the things they've discovered through research is that if you actually go through a process of intermittent fasting or different types of fasts, that your body will start to go around and scavenge, right? And one of the things it'll do is it'll go after the cells that have the markers that are triggering your body to go into the hyper response, and it'll actually destroy those cells. When it destroys those cells, you now have stem cells that are going to make new ones to replace it, but the new ones don't necessarily have the imprint of that trigger. And so now when you go and you are exposed to it, you actually may not have the same big hyper response because your body doesn't have the initialing, the identification with it.
So that's how I could get over my nut allergy if we were to find certain, like, do some sort of fasting or like juice cleanse or something.
Well, this is what the research is showing. And I would work one-on-one with a person. I wouldn't just say everybody go out and do it. Because I want to be watching the nervous system. I want to be watching everything really carefully. And I want to be looking at very specific nutritional stuff.
So
but isn't that interesting that that's what the research is showing?
That's so cool.
Yeah, that when you go into fasting, that's actually an ancient healing strategy, is fasting. Right? For many, like as many generations as we can think back that we have data on, fasting was part of the human experience, if not intentionally, right, unintentionally, just because there wasn't always food around, right? And the people that lived the longest into their hundreds, right, what did we notice? Oh, they would have a spring fast every year, right? Yeah, because the crops hadn't grown up yet.
Right.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating?
It is.
And so that's all by our genetic design. That's the brilliance of the body. And we're just living so incongruently, genetically, in our environment that destruction is the only thing that can happen if we're going to live that incongruently. So it's time for us to understand the body signals and now start taking right action so we can get the level of health that we really want, right? So let's say you do you get the right nutrition in, you're exercising, but you still have stress in your nervous system. Yeah, you're still going to keep turning off that immune response. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
So what is it that controls the immune system ultimately? It's the
brain
and nervous system. And there's something called the HP axis, the hypothalamic pituitary axis. And so that's all about our hormones in our body. And so it's a whole cascade that goes right down from the brain, and that will have an impact on our immune system as well. So if cortisol levels, our cortisol hormones are high, then we're going to dampen down that immune system for as long as they're high. And so what are the things that make cortisol ramp up? Not enough sleep. That's one of the things. Too much sugar and inflammatory foods. That will ramp it up as well. And social stress. Those are all the things that will get that cortisol level where it's high, and then it just stays there. And so your immune system is just like, right, we're just going to wait until we're being called again, right? Mm-hmm. And if it's not being exercised, right, what happens when you go to boot camp and then years go by before you go into action, right? You haven't had that exercise and that highest level of response that could be, right? Okay, so nervous system then. Let's talk about the nervous system. So this is so specific. We know that, I'm going to actually go to the next one. So we know that the brain sends the messages down the spinal cord. That's the central nervous system. And then the nerves come through here, out from the between the bones, and that's the peripheral nervous system linking up to the organ systems. So central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, organ systems. And as long as the messages are traveling from the brain, down the spinal cord, out through the nerves, and back again, without interference, you get to be healthy. But if there's any interference in those flow of messages, we're going to now start to see a breaking down of function in the body. Who remembers what all the immune organs and were? Like, remember this one? The thymus gland, right? So we're going to look at where's the nerve supply to the thymus gland? What if that's being interfered with? You see? The spleen, what if that's being interfered with? Tonsils, what if that's being interfered with? Sinuses, what if that's being interfered with? Do you see? Mm-hmm. So we have to go there first, because that's the nervous system is the ultimate control of everything in the body. And we like to think of it as like a fuse box, right? So Christine, if you went home tonight and you walk in your house and in one room, every light was out and no appliances were working, would you go and like check every light bulb?
No, check the fuse box.
You go right down to the cellar and check the fuse box. Exactly. So chiropractors are always checking the fuse box. That's right. We go there first because we know that those nerves are going out to a certain room, a certain organ system, and if there's trouble here, then there's probably going to be trouble there as well. Makes sense? And we actually even have ways of measuring through technology whether there's disturbances in the nervous system. So we use scanning technology that is actually used by the astronauts to measure their health. And it's all non-invasive. And we can follow it over time and see, is it getting healthier? And it's amazing to see that change that happens. So when you have that misalignment of the vertebrae, hey Savannah, can you bring me the spine? I just want you to have a visual on this. So when you have misalignments of the vertebrae, that's that short circuit. That's that fuse blowing. And thank you. And so I want you to see this, that when we have a misalignment of the vertebrae, what's happening to the nerve? You see that? And so when that happens, for all you Facebook community folks, can you see that happening? All right, so when that happens, right, that's going to start to interfere with the flow of messages between the brain and the body. And then we'll start to see breaking down of function. So when you have that misalignment, that joint misalignment actually causes damage to the tissue around that joint. And so you're going to get a local inflammatory response, and that's going to cause the nerve to get even more irritated. When that nerve is getting irritated, your smart body says, whoa, if we do more movement there, that's going to irritate it even more. And so you start to get muscle spasm to just strap down that joint and protect it. And it might be painful. It might be. Sometimes it's not even painful, and you just have that strapping down. You just can't turn as well. Or you just don't have as much freedom of motion. Some people get so used to their subluxations, they don't even notice that they have restricted motion. They just thought, oh, I just need to stretch some more, right? And when that happens, when the joint actually gets locked down, now we stop getting the proper motion that's going to feed the tissue of that joint with the nutrients and getting rid of toxins that it needs. The other thing that happens is the brain, if it senses that a joint has been strapped down, it starts to recognize that as a problem. And so the signal going to the brain is now a stress signal. So you know if a stress signal is going to the brain now goes into alert, 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 right? We're in stress mode now. We got to figure this out. We're in stress mode. So if you have the subluxations, that's one of the things that will turn down the immune response. And so if we free up the subluxations, now the immune system can get back to work because the stress switch gets turned off. And so movement deficiency syndrome can be the sedentary lifestyles that we have, but it can also be at the joint level, that we don't have enough movement at that joint. And that's causing stress in our physiology as well. And so that's what causes this toxic global physiology from a local subluxation. Okay. And here's what we also found is many parents, when they are asked, what do you notice the most about your kids when you're getting your kids adjusted? They say, I notice that their behavior is improving and their immune system is improving. And now you understand why. Because as we clear the nervous system and turn the stress switch off, now the immune system gets to go full force, and the body is getting clear communication about what's happening in the body. There's nothing distorted anymore. So now the immune response can be an appropriate one instead of an exaggerated one. So that's another factor as well. All right, so allergies, again, we know allergies are a problem. Seasonal food, pet allergies. And what does the research say clinically as far as how that pairs up with the nervous system? Well, first thing is that if it's sinus problems and allergies, these are the levels of misalignment and subluxation that we're going to find. It's going to be the C2 area, which is right at the top of the spine, the second cervical vertebra, right at the very top there. The C6 and C7, which is right at the base of the neck. And then the T8 through 10, right in through here, which again is going to it's the gut flora. So if the gut flora is disturbed and not getting good communication, that can affect our immune system. Do you know that 80% of our immune system lives in the lining of our gut? 80% of our nervous system is in the lining of our gut. Asthma. What about asthma? Where might we see? What patterns might we see with asthma? Bronchial asthma, we tend to see it again, that C2 area. T2 to T4, this area right here, and then S2 and 3, which is right in the sacrum, right down here. So as soon as I realized that I had this pneumonia thing, right, I immediately called out my colleagues, I need someone to come and check me, right? And so didn't they find some stuff going on in that upper thoracic spine, which is nerve supply to the lungs? Yep. And they also found it right at the top of the spine, and again, that's the stress response, oftentimes the vagus nerve. When the vagus nerve is tweaked, it's not doing its job of putting us into ease. And so vagus nerve is for putting us into ease. And if there's distortion there, we don't get to go into ease. We stay in stress mode. Yeah, it's out of balance. What about eczema? Again, this can be happening in all different parts of the body, but where do we see the nerve interference? Again, it tends to be in this upper thoracic area. Again, that's nerve supply to the thymus gland as well. The T8 to 10, again, that's all about digestion. That's it, that immune system in the lining of the gut walls. And then also at the very base of the spine. Again, this is parasympathetic input that's being affected there. So what is it that causes the subluxations?
So actually, I have kind of a question. So seeing as I was seriously born with eczema, I mean, it's like I had rashes almost from the second I was born.
Like day one?
Pretty much. They said that, as soon as they washed me with anything, I was just breaking out.
And what were they washing you with?
Back then it was ivory soap.
Yeah.
That was the only thing. But I guess what I'm just kind of wondering is my mom was a very tiny woman.
So could you have gotten subluxated during the birth process?
Yes,
you could. 90% of children that are checked have upper cervical subluxations. They did a fascinating study in Germany where a medical doctor looked at the upper cervical area where the vagus nerve comes out. They found that under the age of 1, 90% of the children they checked had subluxations that they attributed to probably happening during the birth process.
See, and that makes sense to me now.
Yeah.
But it was like I just didn't matter what they did. I mean, seriously, oatmeal baths.
Bless your heart.
I remember
Bless your
that.
heart. So what are the things that cause subluxations? Yes, we have events that happen like car accidents, sports injuries, slips and falls. You know, here in Vermont, how many people slipped on the ice? We had so much ice this season, didn't we? I had so many people slipping and falling on that ice. So those kinds of things, but we add that together with bad habits, and it's actually probably much more the bad habits that we have that are causing the subluxations than the one-off events. So what are the bad habits? It tends to be postural. It's our sedentary lifestyle. It's our technology use, where we're, sniffing the monitor, or we're on digital, digitally connecting, and you see people, right, in this posture. What part of my spine is being stressed right now? My neck, right? And my low back actually will be stressed. And what part is not actually working very much? This part that should be holding me upright, when we go into this C curve instead of a beautiful S curve, these muscles start to shut down. And so they're not doing what they need to be doing to protect us, and that's that nerve supply to the gut. And so part of the reason I think we're seeing a big influx in that inflection point for allergies is because of the posture that we're seeing that just keeps promoting those subluxations, from our lifestyle. So remember that the 3 stresses that we could be exposed to are postural or physical stresses, but also emotional stresses and chemical stresses, right? So how many people would agree that we live in a stressful world in our country? How many of you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
More. Yeah. It's unanimous, isn't it? Yeah. And would you say that our stress levels are more or less than, say, 10 years ago?
More.
Way more.
Way more, right? Yeah, we're all experiencing it. So if we don't have strategies that we are consciously putting into place, remember health promotion strategies, for most people it was off their radar. They were waiting for the reaction. They were waiting for something to happen to react to, instead of being health promotional, right? Yeah. And then they didn't have an awareness, and then they're so distracted, I didn't get to it. I'll get to it maybe next week. Now's not a good time. And what direction are they headed? Right? Towards crisis.
Oh,
Yeah. Can you see that? So that procrastination is the thief of health, right? So let's see, how do we measure if you have subluxations in certain areas? So if someone comes in with an allergy or asthma concern, I'm going to be doing my scanning and looking for, there's 5 different ways that even more than that we assess whether or not you have subluxations. So we'll look at our instrumentation that I mentioned. We'll look at palpating and moving the joint to see if it's strapped down or not. We'll actually just see, is that vertebra misaligned when we feel it? Visualization is the posture. So we actually look at the posture to see whether that's an indicator that your body, your smart body, is trying to move away from a subluxation to help those nerves breathe a bit, right? Your smart body. X-ray is another way to visualize it. I actually feel the tension in the heel cords is another way for me to measure the tension in the spinal cord. So can I have a volunteer come right up? Let me come up. Okay, so just stand and face this way here, okay? All right, so I want you, especially you that are right exactly square with him, right? I want you to just tell me which ear is higher.
The left one.
Higher. Look.
That one.
Look at which ear is higher. The right one.
Oh.
It's your left.
It's my left.
Yeah. Okay, you're right. You're exactly right. Like, wait, she doesn't see that? Yeah. It's dramatically so.
Yeah.
And when I look at him you just keep looking straight ahead. That's it. So when I look at him from behind, are you looking straight ahead?
Yep.
How many of you can see that his head is doing this? Can you see that? You can see it. Even skewed. Yeah. So your head is actually turned to the left of it. Okay? Tell me, which shoulder is higher?
This one.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Hips. Which hip is higher? Yeah, exactly. Right? Can you see how his body is moving away, trying to open up a certain side, right? Trying to give some space. So let's do another check.
I did have shoulder surgery on this.
You did.
Yeah.
Guess where the nerve comes out that goes to the shoulder? Right out of here. Do you still have trouble with it?
A little bit, yeah.
Let's test it and just see, okay? I'm going to push down, you hold strong. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Okay, hold real strong, ready, hold.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good and strong. I can pretty much hang on his arm there, okay? Now let me just put your arm down and let me feel your neck here. Okay, right here, can you feel that?
Mm-hmm.
Compared to this side, soft?
Oh, yeah.
That's nerve supply to the sinuses. How about right through here? Okay, this, yeah, that
so
right there, that's nerve supply to the shoulder right there. All right, so let's have him, I'm going to push down, you hold, ready, hold. Put your left finger right there. Hold again real strong. If there is a short circuit here, we'll see a change here. You moved off of it, I'm going to put you right there. Yeah, that's it.
Right there.
Hold real strong, ready, and hold. You see the weakness that showed up, right?
Wow.
Okay, put your left finger right here. Left finger right here. Around the front is easier. Yeah. You can't even find it.
No.
I'm touching here, he's going like an inch away. That tells us the brain has a distorted image here. It's not tracking it very closely. Okay, so you're going to put your finger there, look straight ahead. Hold again real strong, ready, and hold. Close out, okay? Now keep your finger there, turn your head this way. Right, now by turning the head, we're opening up that joint just momentarily. Let's see what happens, ready, and hold. Oh, look at that. The strength that came into that, right? Right there. Okay, put your left finger here again, look straight ahead. Right back to C2. You got it?
Yep.
Hold real strong, ready, hold. Close out, turn your head this way now. Taking the pressure off that side, ready, and hold. Solid.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Thank you so much for being a volunteer, right? So that's
awesome.
Another way we're checking, is there nerve interference here or not? So I definitely want to go in with my 5 other ways to measure that, because I'm going to want to measure that over time to make sure that's starting to clear. Does that make sense? Okay. And so now that you understand what's going on and how it all works, let's now look at what can we do about it, right? What are the things we need to start doing? What are the things we need to slow down? What are the things we need to stop doing? So there's 5 important things to remember. So they're all going to be about lifestyle changes, right? We can't change our genome, right? We were born with that. That's not going to change. But how our genes express can be upregulated or downregulated. And the thing that does that change is our environment. So if we make a healthier environment, then we're going to have a healthier response, right? So the first thing is hydration. Just like, whoops, sorry. Check, yeah. All right, so the big, I see. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back. I'm just going to talk right now. I didn't have a slide for this. So hydration. Hydration is the key here. So remember that when you're dehydrated, your body needs to have some kind of fluid for everything to work right. And if you're not putting water in, it will actually make mucus. It'll create a histamine response, because the histamine can be a substitute for water. And that's why as soon as she said, like, because I know she's getting adjusted regularly and she's been really making amazing changes with her diet. And so I just went to the basics. Are you hydrated? She goes, maybe not. And that very day, she hydrated, and it completely changed everything.
And I had 2 meetings the day before, which was very unusual.
So
realized it was like 1 o'clock and I hadn't even had breakfast, let alone what I normally drank. And it was just night and day.
So you would have had a nice opportunity for autophagy, right? Autophagy to occur, right? With the fasting, pushing out breakfast, but dehydration is going to take you down. So make sure you're hydrating. And it has a powerful pro-inflammatory response when you are well hydrated. Yeah. The second thing would be just avoid mucus-building foods. So you've all heard about dairy, white flour, simple sugars. Those are all the basic mucus-producing foods. Some folks may have specific foods for them that produce mucus, so you can kind of track and see which ones they are. But these are the 3 big ones. So if you actually do avoid these, when your body's in that state where it's having that more of a response. So this again is, after a while, as your system gets healthier and healthier, you may be able to include them again. But when you're trying to manage this, don't add more stress to your system, right? Replenishing your normal bacteria flora, right? So you can do that with good quality probiotics. You can do it with your diet, with healthy probiotic foods, live enzyme foods, so kimchi and sauerkraut and kombucha and apple cider vinegar and the healthy versions of pickles that are the ones that are made with just salt. Like they don't add the vinegar to it, right? And they don't add the sugar to it. Yeah. So those are, miso would be another fermented food. So fermented foods are the ones that will add more of that probiotic response or probiotic diversity. The next thing would be to restore your essential fatty acid balance. So when we don't have enough of the omega-3 essential fatty acids or omega-3 oils, right, then we get out of balance and it pushes us into an inflammatory response, a chronic inflammatory response. So if we can just beef up our omega-3s, our fish oils, with a really good quality one, then that actually will be, again, another pro-inflammatory response. And then just getting back to healthier sleep patterns. So we know, research shows us that most healing occurs after 5.5 hours of sleep up to 7.5 hours of sleep. So don't think you're getting away with it if you have less than 8 hours. That's what I was doing for the last couple of weeks. I was getting maybe 6 or 7, 6 or 7, 6 or 7, then one long lie in. You really don't catch up. It doesn't work that way, even though we keep telling ourselves it does, right? And so I wasn't getting that full healing response that my body needed during those crucial hours.
So you do need 8 hours of sleep?
Yes, you do.
All right. Yeah, I haven't gotten 8 hours of sleep in years.
Yeah, you definitely need that. That's what the studies show us. Yeah.
That's probably why I can't gain weight either.
Well, that would be another thing for us to look at, because if you're in that stress response, fight or flight, right? Yeah, you're not going to be. Well, it's interesting. There's many aspects to it we'll look at. Yeah. Okay, and then most importantly, get your spine and your nervous system checked, right? Let's make sure we're clearing that communication pathway. That's going to give you your best chance when you couple it with all of these other things. And then, again, just consider learning more about intermittent fasting and that sort of thing as a way to actually promote your clearing of the body, the bad cells. And then also, if we're still not seeing the results with doing these things, then we may want to look more detail, look further upstream, and actually look at the genetic pathways and see if there's some more specific nutrition that your body needs so that you can make the changes that your body was designed to be able to make. Okay, does all that make sense? All right, and so, getting checked, right. So how many of you are curious? Well, you guys are already in the practice of the other two. Are you curious about what your nervous system, whoops, oh, that's so funny. Sorry about that. Are you curious about whether you might have subluxations?
Oh,
curious about what that might show?
Yep.
I would like to, again, remember what we said was the biggest reason why people were getting worse and worse with their allergies. What was it? Who knows? There were 3 things. There was health promotion. There was the not knowing what to do, lack of awareness, procrastination. That's right. So I want to help you with that, right? I'm going to encourage you to get yourself on our schedule as soon as possible so that we can find out whether or not we can help, all right? And then those of you that are here, learn for yourselves. Think about who else you know that actually could benefit from this. And we've got these coupons here that can be used. Whoops. And I can explain about the details more to you. But you can pass these on because people oftentimes know others. There you go. You can have one too. So so really think about who you could give that to that could really make a change in their life. So again, we know the big idea is to get checked and to recognize the body signals and respond to them, and remembering that procrastination is the thief of health. So remember that, right? That's important. And then also, I just want to again remind you that next month we have our 15 pounds healthier in 15 weeks workshop. Mm-hmm. How many of you know people struggling with their weight right now? Right? Friends, neighbors, coworkers, right? Family members, maybe you, right? You're struggling with your weight. You just told us that. Mm-hmm. This workshop would be appropriate for you.
Awesome.
Yeah. So the workshops are getting more and more filled. So I want to make sure we have room for all of you. So get yourself signed up right away. If you want to go tonight, if you know tonight you want to go, get yourself right on the list, okay? And then think about who else you could bring with you. This is the way we create the pivot points. Can you tell I'm on a mission, right?
Yeah.
I need to reach as many people as I can and create that pivot point before the crisis happens. So help me with that. Bring people that are struggling and looking for answers, and let's just sit down and see if I can help.
Cool.
Okay? And
And I just, when I met Dr. Heather, I had fallen, and I mean, I couldn't lift my hands up. I was going numb all the time. I remember the first time talking to you. You're, I don't want to say an in-your-face person, but you interact. And I remember you just touching my neck and my all but crying. I was so bad that I just could, if you looked at me wrong, I'd cry. I was at the maximum of the stress between elderly parents. I had lost my mom. I was losing my dad. Work was crazy. And I seriously remember being so bad that you just even paying this much attention to me, I was just crying. I was just that bad.
yeah.
The worse you are, the longer it takes to fix things.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because she
That's true.
started with the one thing, and then as we got to know one another, I said, okay, well, I've had plantar fasciitis
Yeah.
for 20 years. Next thing I know, she fixed that. You
No,
know,
now let's just correct that. I didn't fix it,
But-
your body fixed it.
but
Right.
you gave me the
I was the catalyst.
information
That's right.
to make the better choices.
Yeah, so that's
So
my
when
job.
I,
Is being
so
the
when I
catalyst.
say that, you know, when people say, "Oh my God, you go to the chiropractor? That's so expensive," and yeah. Okay, I don't take the medicines I used to take, and I feel that I went from an A1C of a diabetic to I'm waiting for my next one to see if I'm still in the pre, but I managed to get in the pre
right
and not
on.
need medication.
Right on.
So, you know, but the worse you get, the more you gotta
It's
put
so
that
true.
investment
that
into our health
procrastination, that's what you're
at the beginning, and that's where, you know, it's kind of really important to get that in the
Yeah.
beginning, because you're not going to get better until you start fixing.
Yeah.
You got to fix the outer before you start working into the inner.
Right.
Well, let's just say that first, thank you, Elaine. Thank you so much for sharing that, because you know many people don't know what benefits can come from the work that we do, and I am very thorough and very individualized with people as I work with them, and I think that's why we get the results that we do. So we're not using broad strokes; we're being very individualized. So what works for you may not be what I recommend for somebody else.
Right.
I also want you to know that one of the things that we do is we also work with things that can help to bridge you before your body's in that ramped up high potent state. Sometimes there are things that we use just to help you get there. So we might use essential oils, we might use tissue specific nutrients. The Albesia is so good, the Allerplex is so good. Like those are some key things that we go to where we really see some great relief that people get, because it's working with the body's own abilities to heal, and it's just ramping those up. So to thank you for coming tonight, I actually have some essential oil sticks to pass on to you. It's called Breathe. It's from doTERRA.
That's the best one.
Great.
That's the best one, she
That
says.
is the
Okay?
best one.
So you may not always need those, but for right now it might be helpful to you. So I thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
What's really good is, I mean, I now just like put this stuff under my nose instead of spraying myself with the chemicals at work. I mean, seriously.
Right on.
I go to bed, I do use the Breathe Right strip, and then I put this stuff under my nose and I go to bed.
That's awesome. All right, so I want to close our workshop now because we've gone through a lot of information, and I want you guys to just go take action steps. So Facebook community, if you're watching this, what are the action steps that you're going to take, right? Whether you are watching it live with us now or you've tuned in later because you couldn't join us, what are the action steps you're going to take? And if we can help you, reach out to us and ask us what our special is that can help folks right now that are struggling with allergies and asthma. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you.